And takes about a minute for me to get it going live. Okay. Okay, we're live. I'll introduce you now. Hi, I'm Meta Spencer. Today we're going to go to Ottawa, and I want to talk to an old friend. I don't know, maybe I shouldn't call him an old friend. I've known him a couple of years, but it feels like an old friend. And I haven't talked to him for a while, so it's time for me to find out what's going on in Yemen, because he is a Yemeni. He is Dr. Mustafa Bahran, who is a professor at Carleton University in physics. And he was formerly the Minister of Energy in Yemen. And I don't know a thing about what is going on in Yemen these days. So it's time for me to find out. They had a war, and I hope it's over. Good morning. How are you, Mustafa?
How are you?
Oh, good. Yeah, nice to see you
Nice
again.
to see you, really.
Okay, tell me
First
what's been
time.
going. What it's been? I don't know, 7 or 8 months since I talked to you.
Right.
You've
Yemen is in its 8th year of war.
year four.
But the good news, there are good news and continuous of bad news, but there are good news. The good news is it's not a ceasefire, it's a truce. There was
What's the difference?
Oh, it's a big difference. Truce means is a limited amount of time. It's a ceasefire for a limited amount of time.
Oh.
While ceasefire means you stop fighting and then you go to the negotiating table.
You know, that's something I'm supposed to know.
Well, truce.
That's my area, and I actually don't think I've ever even known that. So there you go.
The two parties
my
agreed.
quota of things. I'm supposed to learn one new thing a day, and I don't want to overdo it. But today I might learn 2 or 3 if I listen carefully to what you have to say.
Yes, they agreed to the first 2 months truce last Ramadan, when it was Ramadan, a number of months ago, and they extended the truce once more, and this is the third time they agreed to extend the truce. So that's the good news. We had a 2 months truce, and this truce is being extended 2 months period at a time, which hopefully may lead to a permanent truce, which we call ceasefire.
Isn't that interesting? That I don't know that. That's some sort of legal definition or something. Is that right?
It's I think it's has to do with the military people. That's the way they define.
Okay.
That's you and I. We're civilians, and yet, and this is good news because the people of Yemen have not seen rockets or bombing or active fighting in many fronts. There's also incidents breaking the truce, but small incidents. But by and large, there is no war for the last 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
And that's good news for the people who have no more capacity to take any more, hardship. They are in deep trouble, the Yemeni people. Famine is looming. People are not surviving. even the
Now,
international,
even after this truce began, there's still hunger.
of course, because nothing changed in the economic front.
Okay, let's talk about that. Yeah, that right there is pretty bad news.
Nonetheless, even if the international community and the UN, led by the UN envoy, is trying to push the two parties to agree to a complete ceasefire and then go to the negotiating table, look for a solution, a final solution, if you will. But the problem is one side, which is the Houthi side, is really not interested. The Houthi side is interested in the truce, but not interested in ceasefire and negotiation. In fact, they have just 2 days ago, they have shown through a huge military parade. So they tried to show their military capabilities that they have improved during the last 6 months of truce. Can you imagine?
Well, where would they be getting supplies from Iran, or what's the explanation?
The explanation is they force tribal sheikhs and authorities to surrender their tribal members for the army, and they collect these young men from villages and towns and so on, and they just take him to the army for training, and they receive weapons from Iran and from the international illegitimate market, that is the clandestine market for weapon. And they are making they showed really an army with an armed people and so on, and they're trying to, I don't know if that's, we cannot really make an interpretation whether that is a show of force in order to go strong into the negotiation table, or it is really a new phase of the war. It looks like the latter is the most probable. They are,
in other words, that you think, if I'm hearing you, that this is like an interim for them to regroup and beef up their sources so that they can have another go at it.
it looks like it, but I cannot really be 100% positive it is the case. My read, if you will, from away and discussing with my colleagues, and I have I'm in touch in a daily basis with people from all sides.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's what I was, the next question I was going to ask is what kind of channels of information you have into the Houthi community.
I have.
You do you know any of those folks, or?
Oh yeah, I maintain my personal friendship with everybody.
Yeah, I imagine that's just who you are.
I'm a civilian, and I'm not aligned with either party. You know.
Yeah.
I am pro peace, pro people safety and well-being, Yemeni people, and I am against the war, whomever is involved with, and I keep my personal friendship and connections alive.
So when you say you have contacts with people in the Houthi group, well, I mean, in both groups, but how often are you in touch with somebody there, and how easy or difficult is it for you to maintain those contacts with people inside Yemen?
Inside Yemen is a bit hard, and I get contact with people when they are outside, when they travel, okay, or their affiliates outside.
Okay.
So I'm in constant touch with Houthi affiliates outside Yemen.
Okay.
And because that way, when we have discussion one-on-one, friends and so on, nobody is listening.
Mhm.
But inside Yemen, everything is being listened to.
Okay, when you talk to these guys about I talk about guys because I'm making assumptions that women are not involved, but that's probably not true. Tell me how do they differ in terms of what they describe as their perfect future? What are they each trying to accomplish? And if they really got control, if they, so to speak, won the war, what would be the outcome? Or what do they wish or hope would be the outcome?
The Houthis wish to control not only Yemen and the entire Yemen, they want to control the universe. That's their doctrine. These are ideologues. I mean, these are they are close to being like a cult, crazy thinking.
Right.
Yeah, but that's the core ideologue. But Houthis is a larger enterprise. There is also in the fringes reasonable people. I mean, people who are in it because it's useful to them, because it pays, because they make money out of it. They make other things, other interests. So if you talk to the core leadership, these are basically ideologue, a doctrine that believes in advancing through the sword. That's simple
Yeah,
as
but advancing what? Is it their religion? Or is it some notion about how society should be structured?
no, religion. This is a sacred right, given God-given right, because there is the descendants of the prophet.
Okay. So
It's
what
even
if they had, if they were here in Toronto, what would they be saying that they want to accomplish with you and me?
No, in Toronto, their affiliates outside, they have a different role. Their role is to advance the narrative in which the Houthis are minorities and they have rights, blah 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 blah. So this
Okay.
they play the game well.
Okay.
But I'll tell you what. Let's put this stupid Houthi doctrine aside. The fact in the ground is, for 8 years they haven't been able to move beyond their initial gains. So both parties, everybody in the universe know today that there is no military solution to the problem. The Houthis cannot win, and the Houthis cannot be defeated either. You got it?
No. Why can't they be defeated? Is it just because they're so fanatical, or maybe that's not the right word for it? They won't ever give up. Is that it?
In one hand, in the other hand, because the opposing party is really in deep trouble. The opposing party is incoherent, incohesive, corrupt, you name it. That's one. The other thing is, the last 8 years of war has shown that the other side is incapable of defeating the Houthis. It's a fact. The fact on the ground says the status quo is going to continue unless there's peace.
Would you compare them to the Taliban in terms of the way they think, or their commitment, or their zeal?
Yeah,
Are they that kind of group that if they had their chance, they would oppress people that they disagree with?
Oh, they already do. And they're in the areas under their control. Women's are totally, they're not, the women's right that were marginally gained during the previous regime is gone. They're gone. They are, yes, very similar to Taliban mentality when it comes to the civil liberties and human rights and etc. etc. The freedom to think, the freedom of religion, freedoms of all kinds of. I mean, these people, believe it or not, they're not going to allow you if you have a wedding to play songs.
Oh, really? Okay. Okay.
And this even there are elements of the Houthis in the fringes who were women and progressive people who are associated with them in the beginning, because in the beginning they claimed good things. Now these elements recently, for the last year and a half, they have come out against them because they have been oppressed themselves.
Mhm. So they're really, when I said no women, I was joking. I don't know what I was doing, but you're saying that's true, that there are no women Houthis because women know better. Then it's contrary to their own well-being, and they just won't pretend. Or if you're married to a Houthi man, I mean, if I were married to a Houthi man, what would be expected of me, to shut up and pretend that I agree with him? Or what do women do?
Before I answer the question, there are women Houthis. They are veiled and they are very active and so on.
Oh,
They're activists, yeah, there are. Number two, you have to realize Yemen, before Houthis, is a country that is, the status of women was not great to start with.
okay.
Because it's a tribal society, education level illiteracy is high, very high, and so on. There are similarities between Afghanistan and Yemen in terms of the tribalism, the illiteracy rate, the underdevelopment, and so on. Yes, Yemen was ahead of Afghanistan because during the last regime was not fundamentalist. So the last regime was corrupt, but in terms of social agenda, it was somewhat progressive. So a lot of gains. There was women ministers, women judges, women even in the police and in the army, but small elements. There was sort of headways the women movement was making, and there was a lot of progress being made, okay, slowly. So the Houthis came in a society that is, the society itself is backward, particularly in the rural areas. And you have to realize Yemen is 2/3 rural, 1/3 urban.
Okay.
So women's in these 2/3 of the country, the rulers, are they don't exist. They're second-class citizen, sometimes third. And women in the urban areas have better life, and they are educated, and the education is, there are so many girls in schools. So
And that's true even now.
Yeah, schools
during the war,
except
the war.
Yeah, they totally segregated school. They tried to segregate the higher education, but they couldn't so far because of the cost. Because higher education is not segregated, it's mixed. And they tried to do that, they couldn't, but I think in their agenda is at one time to segregate even higher education.
And under the Houthis, there would be no women ministers or professionals.
Oh, they may put women ministers, but they have to adhere to a certain code. Yeah.
Okay.
But women ministers during Saleh were really actually great ministers, very active. Of course, they're not veiled; they're free. You know, and the thing is, it's worth to mention, even the other side, or it's not, I should not say the legitimate government, because there's no legitimacy issue now. It's the internationally recognized government. That's the right term.
Okay.
The right term is the internationally recognized government is much better, but it has elements with the doctrine, with an ideology similar. The only thing is Houthi is Shiite and they are Sunni with the same mindset. Taliban is Sunni, Houthis are Shiite, but they have the same ideas.
You know, that is such an interesting issue, or not issue, but distinction to me, because I've never really been able to understand how they differ. I mean, is it just like, say, Catholics and Protestants, in that for all practical purposes in daily life, they don't live differently, but it's just when they pray that they have, or when they talk about their religious doctrine, that they have contrasting principles? Or would you say that the personalities, the culture, the everyday life practices differ in any way that anybody could, if an anthropologist came and looked at these two societies, would they say they were different? Or would they say they're all really basically alike? They eat the same foods, they do exactly the same things.
Well, that's a good question. There in practice, on the ground, they are the same. Okay, they basically practice the same oppression. They are they're not interested in modernization and civil societies, and they're the same. Okay, but the main, let's say not only, the main differences is the way they pray, the way you said with the Christian example you mentioned, they pray differently, okay, in details of the prayer, same prayers in detail. But that's not the issue. The main issue is when it comes to Shiite, particularly, and the Houthis are a sect of Shiite called Zaidi.
What?
The Houthis are not Shiite. They are a different sect within the Shiite denomination.
Yeah.
And
you give it name. What did you call them?
Zaidi, Z-A-I-D-I, Zaidi.
Oh yeah, I guess you used that before and I forgot.
Right.
Beg your pardon. Yeah, sure.
It's after a guy named Zaid.
Oh, okay.
In history. So that's like Yemeni, Zaidi.
Okay, sure.
Right. So they are Zaidi, and both the Shiites and the Zaidis, they believe on this birth given right because they are the descendants of the Prophet. The grandchildren of the Prophet, and hence they have the right, one, to rule, two, to acquire the wealth. And that's different than Taliban. Taliban does the same things, but the Taliban leadership does not claim a birthright.
Okay.
See? So basically, and I'm saying it's a matter of power grabbing. I mean, both sides, they want to grab power and wealth. But in the Zaidi or Shiite side, not everybody is allowed to be in power. Those who are descendants of the Prophet Muhammad are the ones that are given the sacred and birth right to rule and to acquire wealth.
How many of them are there? How many descendants of, and by the way, do they really, are they really descendants? I mean, genetically, is it true, or are they just pretending?
If you ask me, probably 99% of them are not, but I mean, you have to have a genetics test, but that's not the issue. The issue is whether they are or not is irrelevant. The issue is to claim a birthright, a sacred right in this day and age is not only nonsense. It's like you're just you're mad. You're not a human being. You're nuts.
I like frankness. Yes, no fooling around there. We know what you believe. Well, I would privately think they're pretty nutty too, but then it's kind of interesting to wonder how many of these guys are they, and how do they present themselves? Do they go around town dressed differently and claiming, look at me, I'm the descendant of the Prophet? Or how do you know who these people are? If you met one at a party, would he have it on his business card?
It's last name.
No, descendant of the prophet.
It's the last name that will tell.
Oh, okay, all right. So how
So
many are there?
there are hundreds of thousands worldwide. I mean, probably millions, but in Yemen, there is, maybe up to 1 million person claiming to do.
Out of what? How many?
Out of
million?
30 plus 35.
There, okay. And so you meet them, and what are you supposed to say to them? I mean, if you introduced me to a descendant of the prophet, how would that go? What would you say, Meta Spencer? May I introduce you to what?
I mean, you got the wrong person, because I'm not going to introduce him or all as such. I'll introduce him to be Ahmed or Muhammad or Ali, or just the way I introduce my neighbor here. I mean, and among them, they don't. They're actually, to tell you the truth, the good side about these families, that we call them Hashemites.
Oh,
Hashemites. That's the grandfather of Prophet Muhammad, a guy named Hashim.
okay.
So all the descendant of Hashim, called Hashemites, that include, for example, the king of Jordan is a Hashemite. That include the king
That's
of
right.
Morocco.
I remember hearing that.
Yeah.
Yes, they refer to him as
The king of
Hashemite.
Morocco to be Hashemite as well.
Huh?
The king of Morocco.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, because traditionally in the Arab world, the Hashemites did control a number of countries. Okay.
Mhm.
Because they represent a class. There was a class system in the Arab world. The Hashemites happen to be the top class.
Okay.
Under the Hashemite comes the tribes. Under the tribes comes the commoners. Under the commoners comes the people who do jobs at the time that were considered shameful jobs, like barber, singer, dancer. All these at the time were considered low level jobs. Not low level economically, low level socially.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that is gone. That's gone. And the Arab world has transformed. There was a number of revolutions everywhere. That was in the 50s and 60s, and all of this disappeared. So what is the remnant of this Hashemite sort of power is these religious movement that believe on the Hashemites to be a special class that is that has the sacred right to rule and hence to acquire wealth. And that has been, in 1962 in Yemen, that was destroyed because the king before 1962 was a Hashemite.
Okay.
And then he was overthrown in 1962 revolution. And there was a Republic of Yemen since 1962. Today, the Houthis keeping the name Republic the way Iran is. Iran is the Islamic Republic of Iran. But who is the ruler of Iran? The guy was with the turban.
Yeah.
The faqih.
The
Khamenei.
Ayatollah.
Ayatollah Khamenei, yes.
Okay.
Ayatollah Khamenei. So although there is government and ministers, but who is the supreme leader? Is Ayatollah Khamenei. They want to do the same thing in Yemen. There will be a government minister, so, but then this guy is called Al-Houthi. His last name is Al-Houthi. Hussein, his brother is a martyr. He was killed by the previous regime, and he took the sort of the flag from his brother, and he is now the supreme leader of Yemen.
Okay. So, and if in the Houthi regime, if a person was not a Hashemite, didn't have the right last name, he could not possibly expect to be in the government, or
No, he could. As
he
long
could.
as, yeah. But majority will be Hashemite. Most, there will be, let's say, 2/3 Hashemite, 1/3 non-Hashemite, whatever, it's a certain mix. And because they need people who are not Hashemite, as long as they submit.
Okay, all right.
You have to submit.
Well,
And
just that you mentioned that it had been that people who had low-level jobs were, low status. And of course, that's true in every society. But what I'm wondering, what it made me wonder is whether you could say that was anything like a caste system, that India has this thing where if you traditionally, if your family was, there were potters, then you're supposed to be a potter, and your status was defined by the group that you belong to, but it was specifically a specific role kind of thing. It was the notion of status attached to occupations in some permanent socially required role in the previous times, or less so than would be the case, let's say, in India.
it's very similar to India, because if you're the son of a barber, even if you're not a barber, at the time, that's way back, at the time, you would be looked at, you'd be looked down at, so to speak. Yes, like it's like casting. Yes, you're being cast aside. It's true, but this is gone. I mean, by and large, gone.
Okay.
But then the problem is the return of the Hashemite to be described as the upper class. Then they give them different name. They don't say upper class. They say they are the enlightened, and they are the one closer to Quran, the one closer to God, all of that, jargon, which is supposed to camouflage an upper class.
Yeah, right.
It's actually a camouflage for the upper class. Bringing the Hashemite as an upper class again, that calls re-energizes the old class structure, which is by and large gone because of education. See, there was a good, 1962 revolution in Yemen. The most important achievement was education. I mean, boys and girls went to schools everywhere in the country, and you find today schools have millions of kids.
It makes me think back to, I've heard people say that really Islam needs a Protestant Reformation movement kind of thing, where you have somebody like Luther or some guy come along and challenge the traditional religious doctrines on religious grounds, not political, but really give a new, more modernized version of Islam for people to believe in. And I've heard people say that there isn't much of that goes on. Matter of fact, there are a lot of, I think it's also true, let's say, for Orthodox Christianity. I don't think they have much of a reformist movement or progressive religious tradition, people working to make change within the faith. But sometimes I wonder, there are certainly educated and enlightened and progressive, and for all intents and purposes, Muslim people who are whose working spirituality is probably not like mine or like yours. I don't know what yours is, but not anything very conspicuous in overt terms. But I would wonder then, are they inwardly believing the doctrines that they're taught? If they're say a Zari or Zaini, do they believe really those things, or is it, you know, for example, it would not be polite for me to ask a Catholic, do you really believe that Mary was a virgin? You don't ask that. And in fact, people probably, or do you believe that Jesus was raised from the dead? Do you really believe that? You don't ask that, it's not nice, because probably they don't really know the answer themselves. They say they believe Jesus was raised from the dead, but do they really? I don't know. Do I really? Not really, but so we don't know. If you look at people who are modern, you don't really know how deeply their doctrines are believed literally as somehow empirically true.
Let me, let me try
And
to
I guess that would be the case for modern Muslims too. Is that right? Or
First, I want to say that we have to realize that by and large, the vast majority of Muslims are moderates worldwide. We're talking about 1 billion people almost. Muslims about 1 billion. They're moderates. They're living in every country, including here in Canada. They're moderates. That's the vast majority. The zealous, let's say, the fundamentalists, the hardliners are a very small minority in all of this. Sunni or Shiite are a very small minority. That's number one. But the problem is, this small minority is very visible and very verbal and very violent, and you name it.
Mhm.
As opposed to the vast majority of Muslims who are just living their daily lives like you and I. Okay, that's number one. Number two, there are a large number of moderate Muslim religious leaders. In Egypt, for example, there is an institution called Al-Azhar. It's a university, and it's like any religious university in the West. It's a large religious university that has.
Where is that, you say?
Egypt.
In Egypt, okay.
Yeah, it's called Al-Azhar. You can look it up. And it's a historic institution that's supposed to be a place to look for or at if you have questions, if you need answers, if you need guidance, by a large number of Muslims worldwide. It's not only Egyptian, it's so that Al-Azhar is moderate to a large degree. It's not very moderate, but is moderate. It comes within the spectrum or the domain of moderate. There's also in Morocco institutions and in other countries similar. So what I'm saying is there are religious leaders who are reasonable, much more reasonable than this hardliners in both sects of Islam, major sects of Islam, Sunni and Shia. And the problem is politics is the reason, power, wealth, and politics is the reason that these fundamentalists or hardliners are much stronger, because people who are looking for power use this ideology. They use this doctrine just as an element. And if you ask me about Iran, I think Shiite ideology is one pillar of the Persian, program or project.
Yeah.
The army is another pillar. They're long arm in the region because they're financing a lot of stuff in the region, a lot of insurgency and a lot of because they want to rebuild their lost Persian Empire, which ruled the universe at some time way back. And Shiite ideology is not really a religious, in my view. It's a tool.
Well, I guess, that's always really an interesting question. To what extent is the doctrine the issue that people are fighting about? And to what extent is it just like an identifier of what group you belong to, but not really the dynamic behind it? For example, I think, in Ireland, the North, the Catholics and the Protestants and their long-standing fight in Northern Ireland. I don't think it was about religion. I don't think it was over, was the Pope really fallible or any of those things? It was about what group do you belong to, and are you on our team or their team?
It's always power.
Well, yeah, but it's sort of identity politics. We have that everywhere. But now in India, there's this Modi government now is very Hindu and very, bigoted Hindu. They really are oppressing Muslims.
I know.
Yeah. Now, is it just the same thing, or is the religious element a more important component of their ideology?
It's actually tribal. I mean, the Muslims are one group, and the Hindus are a different group. And the politicians, look, this is the politicians that they grab power based on populism and hate, and all of that. Not only in India, if you want to win people to vote for you, you can raise issues of immigration for anti-immigrants, or in India, they mobilize the Hindu population, which is the largest population. It's the main population. They mobilize them to vote for them by invoking their igniting, if you will, or instigating their inner feelings that they were fed when they were kids about anti-Islam or anti-this or anti-that. It's always that way. You're just using something to get to the power, and these politicians and wealth seekers and power seekers have that includes, by the way, even Western governments. The Western governments' hands when it comes to the crisis in the Middle East is not clear. It's not clean necessarily, by the way. I mean, the involvement of the West into intensifying this Sunni Shiite fight is not zero.
Okay, tell me about it. Who, give me some names of Western politicians who've tried to promote one sect or one tribe over the other, because that's interesting, but I don't know any of the particulars.
Well, I cannot do that by naming names particularly, but I'll give you two examples. One from history of the West, of the British, particularly the British involvement in Arabia prior to in the 1940s, 50s, and 60s, right? And the same British involvement today. And you will find in the 1950s and 60s, the British government in Yemen was financing, supporting the Hashemites against the new emerging revolutionary forces that brought down the Hashemite kingdom.
Okay.
Okay. And the Lawrence of Arabia stories, you can look it up. Okay.
So Lawrence of Arabia was doing the dirty work. Is that right?
And not only, I mean, Lawrence of Arabia's like people. There are mercenaries. There are a lot of people. And Yemen was not Lawrence of Arabia. It was somebody else. Okay. So what I'm saying is, the British government at the time was supporting the Hashemites against the new forces of progress in Yemen. Okay. Today, the British government is the other way around. You see what it is? It's all, I'm not going to comment on further, but I'm just saying the international politics is, even with the advanced, modern, civilized countries, is about what is the interest of the US or the UK or whatever, or France, or when it comes to the issues in Yemen?
Hmm.
See,
Yeah.
I'm going to stop there at this point, and I may write something about it sometime.
Okay, well, I mean, we've gone into an area that I don't normally ask people about. It's like impolite to go in to ask people certain things. I don't know, but at any rate. So now you as an immigrant, you're both an immigrant and an immigrant. um, is this going to be continuing? Do you see that a large number of the Yemen population have left the country, and is it going to change the nature of the society of what's left over there? Let me give you why I'm asking, and it's related to what's going on in Russia now, because almost everybody who opposed Putin, let's say, either has left the country or tries to, wish they could, or are trying to. And I'm thinking this is going to change the nature of the population. The people who are left there will be of a different overall mindset, I think. Just as I was reading over my notes last night of a conversation I had with Lyudmila Alexeyeva, who was the leading dissident in Russia, human rights activist at one point. And she said, that the war had killed the best people, and that that is World War II, and that the character of Russia overall was changed because the people who survived tended to be the people who were less opportunistic enough to find ways of getting somebody else killed instead of them, so that the overall character of the country changed, and she thought was the quality of people was worse because of World War II. Well, I'm thinking that would be true of any society that is losing a lot of its population to immigration. That
Sure.
people who leave, like yourself, who leave, it's going to leave the nature of the society somewhat different. Is this something people talk about, or is it even relevant? Because to be honest, I don't know that many Yemenis who've left, but maybe I expect there are.
Well, that's an excellent question, Mera. Yes, the answer is a lot of people left, but the hope is this is a temporary leave, because there is 2 million in Egypt, about 1 million in Saudi Arabia, and so on, and there is a large number in Sudan, in Djibouti, and even Somalia, of all places. And we're hoping that these majority of these people will be able to go back once a permanent peace is established. But I'll tell you what is really alarming. You probably know that I am with a number of my colleagues worldwide. We have an organization. It's an NGO. We established it here in Canada, in Ontario. It's called Association of Yemeni Academics and Professionals, IAP. Let me show you our logo. If I take my picture out, there it is.
Oh, yes. What a pretty thing. Oh, show it again. It's actually, show it some more.
It's an Arabic writing.
Uh-huh.
And the English name is at the bottom, Association of Yemeni Academics and Professionals, IAP. So IAP.
This beautiful logo thing. Those are real words in the.
It's the same name, but in Arabic.
Uh-huh. So,
it's called,
the Arabic writing really is beautiful.
It is beautiful. Calligraphy particularly.
Okay.
Yes, and and we hold a monthly event of top Yemeni experts in a subject. Our subject in October, it's usually the first Saturday of a month. Our subject will be the Yemen's brain drain,
Okay.
which goes into your question.
Mm-hmm.
Yemen has had a brain drain for a long time at a certain rate, but it did not affect, it had let's say it did affect, but it has a minor or smaller effect on the developmental aspects of the country. But because of the war, the last 8 years, the number of people the number of brains who left Yemen just to live, just to continue to exist, to live and to do research, because research stopped, and to continue living as an academic or a professional. You cannot just stay at home in Yemen and wait to die out of hunger or out of a bomb. So we are addressing this issue. First of all, we will go over the numbers. What is the rate today? And what is the impact of this today and tomorrow on Yemen? And true, what you said is Yemen will be not the same.
Yeah.
But how not the same, depending on the outcome of this war. So the outcome.
So now there's where you have a basis for really choosing one side or the other than a religious basis.
It's not religious. People are really,
Yeah.
I mean, the fighting is not religious. They use religious terms to hide, camouflage something else.
Okay.
Yes, and that's true. And in fact, and also we already all the programs until March are scheduled. I think January, February, if I'm not, if I remember correctly, we will cover the issue of the population, Yemen's population distribution changes. How is the distribution of the population of Yemen changes? Not only for those who left, for those who stay there, because internal migration in Yemen because of the war is huge. People left war zones to go to places that are relatively less problematic. So there is an issue, and we're covering this. And true, Yemen will not be the same after the war, but what kind of Yemen we will have, and that's will be decided by the outcome.
Well, but look, there's another angle to it, which I've never thought about until now, which is that just as you and I are talking, and a lot of my mental furniture, the things that go on in my concerns every day are influenced by conversations I have on Zoom. And the fact that you're in Ottawa and I'm in Toronto is, doesn't matter. If you were in Yemen, we could have the same conversation. Now, what I'm thinking is, if there is a real, if let's say every Yemeni has a working cell phone where that with Zoom on it, maybe the fact that you happen to live outside of Yemen isn't as important as it would have been, because you can continue and develop relationships and conversations and intellectual projects with people inside Yemen. So even though you're living in Ottawa and your job is here, you could still have more of an influence there than was the case before we had cell phones or computers or and so on. I think Zoom is one of the biggest inventions we don't talk about it as much as we actually use it, because we use it so much. I use it several hours a day, and it's changed my life completely. You know, I don't have to go out and do things. I can do everything from right where I am. Well, you know, could you be running a university course in Yemen from
Wow.
where you're located?
You are, again, that goes to IAB once more. One of the goals of IAB, but this is going to take a few years to establish, is to establish an online Yemeni university.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of the biggest goals, but that's ahead of us, along the road, 2, 3, 4 years from now. We are establishing the grassroots first for it.
Well, it shouldn't even have to take very long. I
I-
bet you, you know, if you have one person in the, I don't know where you want to have this university situated, going around talking to people on the street, or, you know, he could set it up and easily, you know, one person, one
But the
recruiter. You
hurdle-
you set up a card table in the in front of City Hall or in the main street of the city and say, sign up here if you want to join the University of Yemen.
It's true, but the biggest hurdle in front of us is the lack of good digital connectivity in Yemen.
Well, okay, so technologically, you have
Exactly.
some challenges.
I mean, the people, we have enough Yemeni qualified people in the diaspora. I mean, people outside Yemen who are willing to give their time, and we would need some money to establish the platform that is the digital platform to run this university on. But that's not hard. The hard part is to be able to get Yemeni students inside Yemen to learn using internet.
Why?
Because
Don't they already? I mean, I would think that most people in the world now have something like 70 or 80% of the human population now has a cell phone. I don't know whether they're smartphones and whether, you know, you can really good enough to run a university course on them. I don't know about that, but I think they probably could.
Not the phone, no. They have to have laptops and they have to have excellent connectivity. I teach online. I just finished a lecture today, you know.
Okay.
Yeah, because I think that certain courses must go online now for good.
Mhm.
Certain service courses that serve many majors at the time.
Good.
And now I'm actually teaching one physics course that it's in service for the life science majors.
Mhm.
And number of students I have 222 in the class.
Oh.
And today my first lecture was I had 186 showing up.
Mhm.
Not bad. 85%, not bad.
No, that's terrific. Our time is up. We've used up our hour already. Okay, now we're caught up. Now I know what you're doing, and I'm really pleased. And it's fun because what you're doing is very interesting. And I really want to encourage this thing about the University of Yemen online. That's terrific.
But before I go, let me just mention I have been publishing op-eds in Ottawa Citizen if you're interested.
Okay.
I've
No,
done
I
3.
don't see. Okay, send them to me because I don't take the Ottawa Citizen.
All right.
So you have to send me. All right.
Okay.
Terrific to talk to you, Mustafa.
Nice talking to you, Mara.
Okay,
Bye-bye.
thank you. Bye-bye.